This is Dennis Ramundi with the Coffee League, thecoffeeleague.com, our blogcast. Today, I'm be interviewing U.S. Barista Champ 2017, Kyle Ramage, who recently opened his own roastery in North Carolina, Black and White Coffee Roasters. More about that in a bit. Kyle, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on with us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I read about you, and you have had a very interesting background and approach to your life in coffee. But I want to come back to that. First, I want to talk to you about in Seattle this year. It's 2017 when this is being taped. You won the U.S. Barista Championship in Seattle. Tell us a little bit about that and what one goes through to get to that championship. And I know it's incredibly competitive, because there are baristas from all over the country that would like to win that competition. What was your path to getting there?
Right. So this year they introduced a new format, and there were two regional events or preliminary events. Those had, I believe it was 60 competitors each, so 120 competitors started, if my memory serves me correctly. And then I think 16 baristas moved on from each one of those to make 36, I believe it was, total at the U.S. Barista competition. I placed third in the qualifying event, which my event was held in Knoxville, Tennessee. There was another one in Austin, Texas. But yeah, so the story to get into it. It's so I was actually the coach of the 2016 United States Barista Championship.
Is that when Lem
winner
Butler,
as well?
Yeah, Lem Butler was the champ, and I think you have a relationship with him, don't you? Where you worked with each other?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a dear friend. He's also my business partner at the roastery. So Black and White is his and I's venture together. The 2016, 2017 U.S. Barista Champs. So I coached him some for U.S. and mostly for the World's competition when he went to Dublin, last year, and placed fourth in the world. And he was my coach to turn around and see if we could do it again in 2017. And so yeah, we kind of we swapped roles. As far as I know, that's the first that's ever happened. But
let me just ask. When we think of coffee, specialty coffee in the United States, we often think of the Northwest, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. So you guys have brought great respect to North Carolina. Of course, counterculture is also there.
Right on.
So, another So I would say the United States has at least two epicenters of coffee now, as a result of you guys, and one of them being in North Carolina. So you get to the competition, and I've actually only seen one. I was at the New York Coffee Festival this year, and I saw my first competition. What goes on? I think a lot of people would be curious to know exactly what they look for and what they test in these championships.
Oh, right on. So each competition is a little different. The one that Lem and I have been doing to great success here has been the United States Barista Championship, which is a little different format. In that format, you make 4 espressos, 4 milk-based drinks, and then 4 signature drinks, which can be anything that doesn't contain alcohol, and your coffee, of course, for the judges. And at the U.S. level, they look for every single thing possible. So all your words, they take into account all your flavor descriptors. That's where a lot of your points come from, is how accurate your flavor descriptors are to reality. And of course, how good your coffee is overall helps with that. And then your technical abilities, how clean you are, how consistent you are, all those things are taken into account.
And then
you're really judged on the whole thing. Yeah.
And then when you make the specialty drink, I think it's called, you had a concoction that involved dry ice and frozen coffee beans. Tell us about that, because I had not heard about that before.
Right. Yeah. So a dear friend of mine, his name's Christopher Hendon. He's a computational chemist. He's now with the University of Oregon out in Eugene. But he and another few of my friends, colleagues in specialty coffee, produced a scientific paper where they took coffee and then they froze it to different temperatures, and just to see what would happen to the physical grinding aspect of coffee. They theorized that if you froze coffee, it would make it more fragile, and therefore it would react positively to the grinding process which it did, especially at a temperature around the temperature of dry ice, so negative 79 C. Just I forget it's like negative one. Oh, don't even quote me on that. I don't remember in Fahrenheit, but yeah. So basically, I presented a concept where I froze the coffee with dry ice in order to make it grind more evenly. And with coffee, it's just like everything. The easiest one is cooking. You know, if you cut a carrot up into 20 pieces that are all relatively the same size, they'll cook very evenly, and they'll have around the same amount of doneness throughout the different pieces. The same idea is what we're trying to achieve with coffee, is that the more consistently we can grind it, the more consistent we can extract the good bits out and leave the bad bits behind with an espresso or with a coffee in general. So that's generally the idea. So that's what yeah.
Yeah, Kyle, let me ask you a related question. You know, I've heard people say when you buy coffee to keep it fresh, some people say put it in the refrigerator, put it in the freezer. Then what I've read recently is most people say don't put it in the freezer because it will lead to moisture. So would you in general recommend to people to freeze their beans before grinding them?
Let's see. That's always a tricky statement because it comes with a lot of if and then statements, right?
Right.
So I do freeze coffee, like just in a commercial freezer, which can get down to around negative 20 degrees Celsius, so nowhere near the temperature you need to really impact positive grinding. But it can prolong the shelf life as long as it's in a a sealed one-way valve container. So when I freeze coffee, I will freeze like an entire retail bag or sample bag or whatever that's been sealed, and just stick it in the freezer. And then when I'm running low on coffee, I'll go to the freezer and I'll pull it out, and then just consume it like a normal bag of coffee.
So you wouldn't put it back in?
No. Yeah, just like think about like long-term storage,
right, versus
like, you know, normal storage.
Okay.
It would be a long-term storage option versus a short-term storage option. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so then you win the competition in Seattle. You're now the U.S. Barista Champion. Did you expect to win? Did you go in there? Were you considered a heavy favorite, or was it a surprise to you?
Oh no, no, I was not a heavy favorite. Like I said, I placed third in the qualifying event, which typically that means you're going to do probably pretty well in the normal competition as well. But I mean, you never know. We've had people who won those things and not done well. So no, I was not. There was another favorite who had gotten second the year before. Her name is Andrea Allen. She works for Onyx Coffee Lab in Springdale, Arkansas. She was definitely the heavy favorite, and rightfully so. An amazing competitor, amazing person, great friend. Her routine was incredibly. Our routines were very different. Hers was very like big picture coffee and about like relationships and things like that relate more to her business as owning a roastery, and mine was kind of technical and a little bit more about my relationship with this particular producer that we had been working with. And yeah, I mean, I think if we did that finals day, 10 times, I think we probably would have swapped places, 4 or 5 of those times for sure. And it was very, very, very close. So yeah, I was definitely not the favorite. I was definitely didn't expect to win by any stretch of the imagination. Until that time, I worked until 2-3 months ago. I worked in equipment, which means I sold machines. I didn't actually like sell coffee, so to speak. So as far as I understand, I'm first to ever win the United States Barista Championship from a non-coffee making background.
Right.
So
although you had been a barista and roaster before that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I've worked in coffee for a long time, but yeah.
Okay. So then you win, and then you go off to Seoul, South Korea for the international. And
Correct.
I think you were a finalist and finished 6th in the world competition.
Yes.
Was that a different experience than the U.S. competition, or was it similar?
It is very similar. The level of competition was higher overall. So, I mean, I think at the U.S. we have some of the most talented professionals across the board. Like I think, a few of the people who were in the finals, probably all the finalists could have very easily done very well in the world competition.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the overall level was very, very high. So it's like everyone was bringing their best stuff. It was a cool experience.
Great, great. So now you have all that under your belt, and how has your life changed now that you're the U.S. Barista Champion was and a finalist in the world competition?
Well, it's been really fun. Like I said, about 3 months ago, Lem and I took over a local coffee roastery, and we're operating that now. And so that's been the biggest change for us, is that Lem left a larger company, I left a larger company to kind of start our own little bit more small, a little bit more boutique coffee roastery here in North Carolina, and it's been a lot of fun. And the competitions have kind of afforded us some credibility, which is cool. So we've been able to. People have been they're not very leery of us. They're not like, oh, we don't know if those guys are doing good stuff or not. They kind of automatically assume that we're doing good, and then if we're doing bad, then they'll have to tell us.
They've set the bar. You've set the bar high. Now, and I'm very much looking forward to getting your beans, black and white roasters, because I mean, look, both of you guys are coming from a very high level of knowledge, and obviously you've been around the world and experienced the best roasters, the best baristas, the best coffee. What will be unique and different? What do you bring to besides your expertise? What do you hope to accomplish? What do you want to say about your product for those that obviously want to look into it?
Right. No, totally. Lem and I have had the amazing opportunity to work with so many talented people over our coffee lives. And I think that's what people are, I feel like, is like a kind of a conglomeration of experiences and education and help from other people. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that we want to necessarily do anything that's crazy different from, some of the big names, like what Counterculture and Intelligentsia and a lot of these guys are doing that is so impressive is, produce on a large scale, high quality coffees. We're on a much smaller scale, so it's a little easier, but we just want to find and sell and market extraordinary coffees, and then work with producers that we've met along the way. Like Jose Manuel Gallardo, the coffee that Lem and I used for both U.S. and World the last 2 years, is a spectacular producer from Panama, and we want to build relationships like that and work with producers to make better coffee throughout the world. And Lem and I have a huge educational background. He was an educator with Counterculture, and we're both SCA certified instructors. So we want to just make specialty coffee better all around the world. So
what countries?
Lem is taught in China.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what countries do you plan on sourcing from?
Wherever we find interesting coffees, and we feel like we can do some interesting stuff and have some good feedback. That's the trick. Of course, Ethiopia and Colombia are kind of a low-hanging fruit for us. It's coffees that have intrigued us and we've loved for a long time. But also, like we're actually roasting and cupping coffees from Myanmar today. Mm-hmm. And then we have a direct relationship with a producer in Guatemala. We're open to, and we've met with quite a few producers from a lot of Central and South America, just because it's a little closer, it's a little easier. The Spanish English is a little easier than some of these other languages that we try to interact with. But yeah, we definitely want to do that as much as possible and to be as traceable and as fair, not only with our coffee purchases from origin to the roastery, but also in our after roastery support stuff too. Make a place for baristas to come and to work and to be happy and to feel fulfilled and all those things that you want in work, to be fulfilled and to feel valued and to learn and all those things. Right. That's what we're trying to build. And it's like I said, the model is not incredibly different than anyone else, but Lem and I's interactions throughout the world and throughout our time in coffee will kind of shape what that looks like. We won't look or buy the same coffees as some other people, but we'll have hopefully a similar ethos to quite a few of the specialty coffee roasters that we collaborate with and love and cherish. Right.
It sounds like in addition to knowledge and expertise, you're bringing a lot of love and passion for coffee and for the people you serve to the business.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask you a question. I had read or heard somewhere that there was a coffee that you loved from the Ethiopian Conga Cooperative, roasted by Counterculture.
Yeah.
And after you tasted that coffee, your life and attitude toward coffee changed.
Yes, that was
Tell us
yeah,
about that.
absolutely. That was a wash coffee from the Conga Cooperative in the Yirgacheffe region of Ethiopia. It was a washed coffee that actually I was working in a cafe here in North Carolina, which is where I've worked my entire specialty coffee career, and it tasted like flowers and citrus and like very sweet, like honey. And it was just like so different than anything. It was like my aha moment, that moment where you're like, oh wow, coffee can be this other beverage. It's not this like this brown, hot liquid that, it's kind of bitter that you put cream and sugar in and you drink to wake up. It's like, it became this other experience for me at that moment. And, that's part of the reason why I love Ethiopian coffee so much. That was the coffee that really changed my life, or changed my perspective on coffee, so to speak. But yeah, also their coffees are just consistently amazing. We have 4 coffees for sale from Ethiopia at the moment, which is quite a lot, but they're just all incredibly interesting and delicious in their own right.
Right. What are your coffee drinking habits? What do you consume in a day, and how do you consume it?
Well, I typically wake up and we make coffee at home. My wife makes coffee at home before she's a personal trainer, so she gets up significantly earlier than I do.
Right.
And so she makes coffee, and then I'll typically drink, I usually drink a cup of that she has made that morning. And then I'll come to the cafe and drink either a pour over or a batch brew or whatever. I drink a lot more filter style coffee than I do espresso, mostly because I just got off drinking mostly espresso
right.
lifespan for the competition. We drink a lot of espresso and taste a lot of espresso. So I'm sure I'll get back into it. But here lately, it's been mostly filter coffee, or traditional American style coffee. When you say coffee, that kind of coffee.
Right. And when you make it at home, do you use a Chemex or AeroPress, or how do you make it?
Yeah, so I use, in the morning, I am not the most functional human, which is
I can
wild.
Relate. Yeah.
So I use a Bonavita home brewer. Basically,
Right.
it's like a really fancy Mr. Coffee style coffee
Right.
pot that brews delicious coffee for me without fail. I do have a commercial grinder at home from my life at Mahlkönig. I have a full commercial coffee grinder in my garage. But yeah.
And when you travel, what do you take with you?
Oh, this is actually a cool story. So I usually take, I was gifted a Comandante hand grinder, which is by far the best hand grinder I've ever used. The kind guys at Comandante passed that along to me, but, and an AeroPress typically when I travel. But just yesterday, I received in our first shipment of specialty instant coffee. So this is kind of a trend that's kind of picked up here the last couple of years, started by another barista colleague named Kalle Frese from, Finland. He's from Finland. I almost said Sweden. Called Sudden Coffee. We actually use a different co-packer, but called Swift Coffee out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. But we got our first batch of instant coffee. And my trip that I leave for on Friday, I will be taking with me probably only instant coffee for my trip, because it is truly delicious. It's kind of a wild to think about that instant coffee or soluble coffee, or however you want to think about it, as can be really delicious. But if you put really delicious coffee in and pay a lot of attention to the processing, it can be spectacular. So I'm really excited to launch that project here in the next couple of weeks.
Interesting. I wanted to discuss with you, you had an interesting career journey coming to coffee, from what I've read, and that is you studied at the Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. You're very strong in your faith. It's a very big part of your life, mm-hmm. I've read. And I guess it was when you were at the seminary that you started working to make a little extra money as a barista. Tell us about the influence of coffee on your faith and your faith on your coffee, either way or both ways. Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. I think I think, as you know, most adjusted humans are, that our faith and our life are pretty intertwined, whether mm-hmm. we think they are or not. But but yeah, I think actually coffee influenced me to be a little bit more of a real human. I think, I went to a school that was fairly academic in nature, and we learned a lot of things. But as people, because I worked I was a vocational minister before I came to study, actually, and then being at the seminary, being in that graduate level academic culture, and being around a lot of other people who think very similar to you, it can be very, very difficult to think well about life and about work and about your faith and what it means to be a person of faith in a real way. So I think me being able to work at a coffee shop with people who just normal people, and being able to work in an industry of people who don't, a lot of them who don't share the very same background or culture or religious beliefs that I do, it was actually very, very helpful for me. It helped me to reassure myself in my faith, as well as to make sure that my faith was representative of the gospel that I professed in action and in theory, right? So kind of put that feet to the faith, as you heard it said before.
Right, and also one of the things I'm exploring in this series and the blog and podcast I'm doing on coffee is not just coffee itself, but coffee and coffee culture. And I spent a lot of time in Sweden, where my wife is from, and seeing the culture. One of the things about coffee that I wanted you to maybe tie to your religious training and background is coffee seems to me to be something that creates community, that brings people together. There's so many things in life that divide us, but coffee is something where in Scandinavia, for instance, they have in Sweden this word fika, where people come and join, and it's about community. Have you been able? Do you utilize that in combination with your religious training, or do you see that connection between
I
communities?
definitely see the connection. Yeah, the connection is real, and is pretty amazing. Just that coffee can bring people together at a time where we kind of set aside to, ideally set aside to kind of calm down and slow down and do a little self-care a lot of times, come get a coffee or whatever, here in the States especially. But I definitely don't overtly use it to promote faith, so to speak. But I do feel like it is a great tool to how do I put this? A great tool to enjoy one's faith more. Enjoy one's faith more, so to speak. Right. So I think it's a great time to take a moment, take some time, and to come and sit in a coffee shop and chat and be social, and to listen to other people's concerns, and to be a member of society. A lot of especially us, I'm like a borderline millennial, so we like to use our phones a lot and get kind of sucked into our own life and our own world and our internet personality, and to take a moment to take the phone away and to just enjoy a coffee with someone, to talk about it, or just to have a moment with friends. In the cafe, we have like large tables so that we kind of encourage people to sit together and have conversation and things like that. We definitely want that to be real. So,
does Black and White Roasters have a cafe segment to it?
Yeah, it does. We have a really small cafe here in the front of the roastery. It's only maybe 15 or 20 seats, but it's it's a cute little cafe. We hope to expand that, but we've only been doing this for 3 months, so it's kind of a new thing for us.
Great. One last question along these lines is, when you were I was told by another barista and friend of yours, Daniel May, that and roaster at Portland Roasters, who I've also interviewed, tremendous guy. He mentioned that when you were in the competitions, and especially when you won, there was some maybe controversy stirred because of your faith, because of your beliefs. And he said you really, it was quite impressive how you navigated that. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was one of the harder, definitely one of the hardest things I've dealt with in my professional career. It was a pretty dark days, which was just tough, because I was basically, it was an interview sort of like this one we're on right now, where we talked about faith and culture and my work in coffee that was done by the seminary here that I was a part of. and a few coffee professionals found it, and they highlighted some things in it that were spoken in a very closed context, like a context of all like interfaith stuff, and it didn't it didn't sit very well with a few of them, which is totally fine. I understand that differences in faith and differences in beliefs are real, and it was kind of at one of the. I personally feel like it was kind of at one of the climaxes of our president's times. So like the energy in conversations,
Right.
especially with oppressed communities, was very high.
Right.
And so it kind of I kind of ticked a lot of the boxes of a person that a lot of people would very much dislike. Right. So I'm a white, middle class, educated Protestant Christian from the South. So it was a few things were kind of true of me, and a few things were assumed of me. One of them was that I hated gay people or people who didn't have life choices that were the same as mine, and which is totally untrue. But it's a realistic jump from. So I don't put a lot of like stock, or I don't have really any hate for the people who are even don't have any hate for those people or any. I totally understand why they were frustrated with the overall concept, but yeah, it was actually worked into a really cool opportunity for me to actually introduce myself to a lot of people and to talk to a lot of people who think a little different than me and have backgrounds that are very different than mine, and who have actually been really hurt by the faith and by the church. It was a cool opportunity to actually get to know some people and really have some really good conversations with people that, like I said, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but that are great people and want to have conversation and want to work and want to do right. And so it was good.
Right.
I think a couple of those conversations were hard, but they were very profitable.
And I've also read other interviews with you, and I know that you specifically mentioned that in your work in coffee, you've worked with a lot of gay people, you've worked with a lot of transgender people, and from what I read, it seemed like you were open and supportive and accepting of everyone.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely don't have any qualms personally with anyone. Faith. When it comes down to that thing, I don't expect anyone's faith convictions to be exactly the same as mine, and I would assume that no one expects my faith convictions to be exactly the same as theirs. So that's one of those things that it's very hard when like religious beliefs butt up against cultural norms, but that's been the case with faith for always. So
Right.
It is what it is. But yeah.
Great. And okay, final question: where would you like to be with your with Black and White Roasters in 4 or 5 years from now?
Oh, I don't really know. That's a great question. One thing that we want to do for sure is stay true to our values. We've seen a lot of our companies, not a lot of companies. We've seen a fair amount of companies grow that start with these amazing values of work and their employees and all these things. And then when they get to a certain size, they have to make a decision. Do we grow and make more money, or do we stay smaller and keep the relationships that we have going? And I hope that we will be able to make a decision that values our employees and values our core goals, of doing good as we go and excellence and service. That's what I hope. I really just want to stay true to those goals. And it sounds like probably every kind of rote example, but I've watched quite a few companies as they grow become more and more dollar and money centric and less people centric, which unhappy people are not good workers, and they don't do good work, and they don't. Yeah, it's hard. So I really want to do as much good as we can, support growers, I hope that we train baristas that become so talented that we can't afford them anymore, and they have to go on to be, green buyers and head roasters and coffee program managers at other companies. And that's what Counterculture did for me. Was I came from their system, and they basically trained you as much as you want to be trained, and then let you loose with all this information, and you could do with it as you wish.
Right. And finally, I know so that was the
yeah.
last question, but I have one more. When you see,
Oh, it's
I
okay.
think it was Nestle's bought out Blue Bottle for a huge amount of money, or
Right. Yes.
Stumptown and Intelligentsia, I think, were purchased by Pete's Coffee. Good or bad?
Yep.
Does that? How do you feel about that? I think I see it as very, very mixed, but I'm curious, somebody
Yeah.
is like yourself, what you would think about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, JAB Holdings, they're a big German conglomerate that owns, most of the specialty market now in the United States.
Hmm.
Pete's and Stumptown and Kerr Green Mountain and Intelligentsia and all that fun stuff. But and then the Nestle acquisition of Blue Bottle, I think it is for the industry as a whole a good thing.
Hmm.
And I'll say this, like that we need another brand I was talking about some of this in Korea. Actually, we need another brand to come alongside Starbucks to be the premium brand of the line. I know Starbucks is trying to differentiate themselves into creating other styles of cafes that are their premium concepts, but I don't know that it's going to translate perfectly. And I think Blue Bottle is set up in a way that they could be that. They could be the specialty side of coffee, or the specialty brand, our high-end specialty brand in the United States. And I think that could be very good for people like me as a whole, because what they say is high tide raises all boats. Right. So the general idea, the same thing, that basically coffee lags behind craft beer, especially coffee lags behind craft beer about 3 to 4 years. Is what I'm noticing. Kind of getting closer and closer here recently. But the same thing happened in craft beer. A lot of the larger craft breweries were purchased up by AB InBev or Coors are all one of those large groups. And same thing in craft whiskeys as well. They all are craft bourbon. The same thing happened maybe 10 years ago. So the same concept is happening. So basically, if that does happen, or since that has happened, I think it will basically make specialty coffee more real to more people, because we still don't have a ton of market penetration. America's full of coffee drinkers, but very few of those are specialty by comparison. And so if we get more people drinking better coffee, that means that more people will understand the craft of specialty coffee. They'll be able to support wage increases for cafe workers, and be able to support just a growing price point of coffee, which I think is good. We pay far too little for coffee, especially when compared to wine or beer. We pay way less than we should be, but whatever. It's another topic for another day. But on the flip side of that coin, I think it is tricky that we're losing a lot of our identity in specialty coffee to the highest bidder. Because Intelligentsia and Stumptown and Blue Bottle were really especially 4 or 5 years ago, were really the drivers of our industry. They drove what was cool. They drove what was amazing. And some of the ubiquitous things about specialty coffee were implemented by those companies. Almost, most of the cafe design and drink styles and latte art and all those things all came out of those kind of those three companies that had amazing cafes in all over the country. So,
Right. My own personal experience was
bit.
I started drinking specialty coffee and developed an interest because my daughter at the time was living in Portland, Oregon, and she took me to Stumptown in the Ace Hotel this was about 12 years ago, 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I just thought, oh, wow, there's way more to coffee than I ever thought. And everything about it. And then in Portland, I experienced the coffee culture as being different than other places I've been. So great.
Yes.
Well, thank you so very much, Kyle, for taking the time to come on today and to speak with us. And I very much look forward to getting some beans, purchasing some beans from Black and White Roasters there in Winston. No, you're in Wake Forest. North Carolina. And again, I will now think of North Carolina and Portland, Oregon, and maybe New York City as the epicenters of great coffee in the United States. And I hope sometime in the future you'll come back on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget about Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Chicago in that amazing list.
Yes.
Those are kind of the big hitters as well. So, okay. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.